Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy podcast. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a newer, stronger foundation essential in creating your meaningful legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. As much as you like this podcast, I'm certain that you're going to love the book that I just released on Amazon, Fuel Your Legacy, The 9 Pillars to Build a Meaningful Legacy. I wrote this to share with you the experiences that I had while I was identifying my identity, how I began to create my meaningful legacy, and how you can create yours. You're going to find this book on Kindle, Amazon, and as always on my website, samknickerbocker.com. Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy show, Client Edition. And today we have one of my good friends. We've got to know each other a lot better over the last few years, Marcus Tarr. I don't know how else to say this, but he's a lot like me in the most annoying ways, but also in the best ways. We're really good friends. But we met. How did we meet, Marcus? I think we just met we both worked for the same company doing summer sales. I think I first became aware of Marcus on the leaders bulletin in our company.
Yeah, I think that's right. We both were working for the same pest control company, and you were in a different office selling a different part of the country, and I stayed in Utah with a local office, and I just knew that you were out there killing it, and you were some competition I had to go after.
Yeah, I was destroying him. He's being modest. I'm just teasing. It was a good competition, I feel like. I mean, the funny thing is I remember because they were like, oh, well, he's selling as much as you. And there was another guy named Travis Morse, and Travis was crushing it. And all these people, they were comparing like the numbers of how many accounts we sold. And I was like, yeah, kind of. But what's his average contract value? And there's like 350 or 375 or something silly. Because in Utah, you sell pest control for like half the price. And I was over in Philadelphia, and I was selling them for average of like 600 to 650. I was like, yeah, he's going to have to sell twice as much as I do to make even close to half as much income as I'm making. Like, I don't care that he's selling as many. But the point is, he's dang good at communicating. He's really, I think some things that make, what are your thoughts on this, Marcus? What makes the best salesperson? Like, what do you think is important for the best salesperson?
Oh, it's a really good question. I mean, I feel like there's a lot to it. Yes, communication is huge. Being able to read people, read body language, and that's one of the first concepts that I learned about really in my sales manual was using body language, how you talk, the energy that you are exuding. I think that really sales isn't any more than a transference of feeling. And if you can help someone to feel the way you feel about product or service, whatever it is, then it's a lot easier. But so I think the other main thing is the commitment to doing it, to working hard, and having the mental toughness that it requires, because it can be a pretty, I don't know, discouraging job at times when you go home with a bagel or zero sales is what that means in the day, and you wonder sometimes if you're ever going to sell again. Then you go out the next day, and of course you always end up doing it, but it just takes that consistency and refusing to lose, a lot of persistence, I would say.
Yeah, I think persistence, but one thing, I mean, all of that is true, so I'm not going to rehash it because it's all true. One thing that I recognize in Marcus and myself, and what I recognize in really all great sales professionals that I know, and most people are going to say, oh, it's about a feeling, it's about emotion. And although that's true, you can have people who are on quote unquote natural salespeople or natural closers, and they're able to get to a certain point with their natural ability. And this is actually, I think, applicable in just about any genre of life, not just sales. But what makes a master at something is somebody who really understands the minutia of why everything works the way it does. And both Marcus and I, to our detriment at times, are stupidly analytical about stuff. And so yes, it's about emotion. Yes, it's about a transfer of energy, all of that. But to the point that if we were to like put a scale of like, okay, this client needs a 6-level energy and this speed, right? Because we've studied so much the intricacies of body language, of communication, of those things, that it's become, we understand why, not just how it happens, but like how to duplicate that and replicate that at any given moment when we need to. And the natural salesperson, I don't think has as great of control, in my experience, over every little aspect, because they don't really know that every little aspect exists. They just do it naturally. So they can't create it the same way that somebody who understands it, understands the intricacies of it can. What are your thoughts about that? I'm curious.
No, I think that's very true. I love analyzing the sales process and understanding the why. You can teach anyone what to say, when to say it, all these different aspects, but when you really understand, okay, why is this part of the sales process come right after this section? Why do you ask this question in this way? What kind of feeling are you trying to elicit with this? Again, we've talked about this before and just like analyzed those kinds of things. Sales isn't, it's a science as well as an art. You have to understand those intricacies in order to be successful, and also be able to translate into different scenarios, because no two scenarios are going to be the same in a sale, but the transferability comes with really having that deeper understanding of why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah, I think that is the key. And so in other areas of our lives, it's those principles. And again, this podcast is really talk about like the habits, mindsets, and behaviors of the world class, of the most successful. And that's exactly right? You could be a great artist on talent or skill and be able to create good art, but the person who's technically better will probably almost always beat you if they can match your artistic skill or talent, because they know why they're doing it. So they can go to any person and say, hey, what do you want? And they can intentionally create what somebody wants rather than just create something beautiful and whoever buys it, buys it. They can proactively create something for the right individual. And that's what separates what I would say a world-class sales professional from just a novice or an amateur sales professional, is those things. And I know people who have sold for years, they're successful by most people's standards, they make money, but they never have applied themselves to learn the intricacies. And so when they go into another field, like maybe they're really dang good at selling pest control, but when they get into selling solar or securities or these other things, they're like, crap, I don't know how to sell this, right? I got so good at the sales pitch of pest control that I can sell that in my sleep, but I don't know how to sell securities. I don't know how to sell a car. I don't know how to sell these other things because they don't understand the actual process of sales. They just understand what their person told them to say, and they got good at saying it. But being able to transfer that sales ability across the board to any sales situation, that's super valuable. So I'm curious for people's enlightenment, right? We first met on the Leaders Bulletin. What was your first impression of me, either when we first met or on the Leaders Bulletin, and how has it changed the more you've got to know me? For better or worse? I mean, it could be worse. Let's be honest.
Oh no, definitely better. I mean, I didn't hardly know anything about you at that point. It was just a name and a number. So I knew that you were successful in what you did. I don't think we actually met in person until it was a training. It was like at a Super Saturday training where you had the different offices combined after the summer, something like that. And you got up and you gave a presentation. And that's where I first met you. But I think at that point I started to be impressed with Sam, your speaking ability, your presentation ability, and how persuasive of a person you are. And then, of course, the more I've gotten to know you, I've learned how much conviction you have in certain areas of life, and how committed to ethics, to being the right kind of person and the right kind of business person is. And I mean, my respect for you definitely grown and changed over time, because I've been able to see you, and you work a little bit more closely with you in a mentorship, leadership role. And so, yeah.
So what role, I mean, just curious, when looking at those things, what role does that play? Because I know how I view myself, and this is a funny thing. Like, you ask somebody else how they see you, and sometimes it's right on, sometimes it's not. And that's my life's mission, and kind of the point of legacy is to be able to intentionally plan what people will say before they answer that question, without telling them the answer to the question. So now I'm going to tell you what I think of myself a little bit. But I'm curious, in your experience, how often do you have people who, because I guess I wonder how would you define the word persuasive? Let's start there. I'm just curious.
I don't know. I think I would say it's the ability to help me feel, understand the way about something, the same way that you feel about it, and not, I guess a little bit of boldness comes in that. I would combine that with the description of you and of persuasiveness is being willing to communicate to people what may feel a little bit uncomfortable, or at least for me, I'm a different kind of person. What may feel uncomfortable to say to someone, because you risk hurting feelings, or you risk, what are they gonna think? But knowing at the end of the day that it's in their best interest, it's for you're sharing truth with them, but also just having the conviction behind what you say. I don't know.
Okay. Hey, there's no right or wrong answers here. I'm just curious. So how would you define the difference between being persuasive or influential? Okay, I would say persuasive and influential could be very similar words. I think influence is maybe slightly more passive, where persuasive is a more active influence. But how would you say the difference between those two and manipulation? Like, what's the contrast or the difference between the two?
That's a good question. I think manipulation. Well, I think persuasiveness can become manipulation when the person has their own self-interest in mind more than, like, when that supersedes or trumps the interest in the other person.
So when the sales professional is more concerned about their outcome and what it's going to mean for them than what it's going to mean for their potential client. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of how I've always seen the difference, or believed that difference to be.
Now, I think that's how I would describe it as well. I think it's important that we recognize that being manipulative and being persuasive or influential, it's the same skill, right? It's the same natural laws at work. It's the same not motivations. I think the intention and motivation behind the application of the skill is ultimately what makes it right or wrong. And that's something that only only the person inside of themselves, when they're actually engaging in the act of influencing or persuading or manipulating, only they know what they're trying to accomplish. And you have to be very careful to make sure that happens. That's something that I feel I've done most of my career is I'm pretty open. I'm curious on your take on me on this, but I feel like generally when I'm helping somebody or persuading somebody, I don't just use the skills to do so. Again, for better or worse, I often explain to them how I'm persuading them. Like, hey, I just did this so that you would respond this way. Like, because I want to educate them as well as get my objectives done. Have you ever found yourself doing that, like explaining why you're explaining it a certain way instead of another way?
I think when I'm talking with clients, I don't really do that as much. But when I'm training team members, then I'm probably more likely to do that. So that was interesting with what you said. Maybe with people that you're working with, one-on-one clients, whatever they may be, that you explain that to them. I don't know. Maybe that elicits a question. How is that usually taken? How do people usually respond to you explaining that? I mean, is that beneficial?
Well, I mean, who's to say, right? I think I make an okay income. I definitely don't make more than some people, and I definitely make more than others. I just feel better about myself because part of my mission in life is to help people become more educated and become more self-reliant, and they need to understand these rules so that they can apply them in their own life. Like a big part of coaching or mentorship or sales is helping your client. I mean, and this is a business model, right? Because there's some business models that they sell you something and they get you hooked on it, and almost like a drug, and you just have to keep coming back to them for more, and they never let you in on their secret. And that's a business model. The other business model, and this is one that I strive to be more like this business model. I'm not perfect, but is that if I educate you, if I give you all the skills that you need, then out of respect for me, you'll keep coming back to me. And if you choose not to, that's fine, because then you're doing what's in your best interest, right? There was a lot of times when I was out selling pest control where I would tell people, that like your neighbor, he got a cheaper price because whatever reason, right? But for you, I'm gonna sell it to you at this price. And I was just open about that, because the worst neighbors talk, and the last thing you want is your neighbor to say, "Oh, well, I got it for this price," and you're like, "Well, he sold me at $20 more. Why?" Well, this is why, the
hard objection sometimes to overcome. Yeah,
it is. You're like, you screwing me over? No, I'm not screwing you over. I sold it to you this price. You see the value at this price. That's why it's that price. Let's get this done. They thought it was only worth $90. It's a marketplace. So that's what it is. Anyways, but I would do that often, and I would often be very upfront. Like, look, I could sit here and tell you my product is the best and all this stuff, but the reality is there's this company and this company that would give you a better service than I would. They'd probably do it for about the same price. So, I mean, there's really no reason for you not to go with those other people. And that actually got me a lot of business, being that upfront and honest with them, because they felt like, okay, well, at least this guy's not trying to sell me something, Of course I'm trying to sell them something. But so for me and my personality, because I come off a lot more blunt, then I feel like it worked for me. Otherwise, I think I might come across as rude. If I wasn't like bluntly honest about all of the truth and it was all one-sided, then I might come across as rude, conceited, or like I was lying through my teeth, even though I'm not necessarily. But being open about the whole situation helped me in sales. I don't know if we have, by the way, for you guys who don't know Marcus or don't know me, our personalities are pretty polar opposite as far as like communication styles. But we have the same type of mind as far as like how we think about stuff a lot of times. So it's pretty funny. But yeah, so I felt like it has helped me more, but I think that goes back to another question or core belief of mine that I'm curious how you see it. What would you say the difference between sales and closing is?
Difference between sales and closing? Well, when you talk about closing, I've always understood that just to be when that transaction takes place. When they're signing the papers, when everything's closing, like you're closing up not that you should always think about it like that. I think you should think of it as a beginning, an opening of a relationship or business relationship. But
that right there, for those of you guys who aren't listening, I want you to explain that. But this is what separates a great closer from a okay or average or a non-closer. Is that what he just said? So say it again and then explain it a little bit.
Oh, well, yeah. What I was saying is just the wording sometimes might throw people off. Closing, you're closing the transaction, but you're opening the relationship, the business relationship. If you don't continue to service that customer and meet or exceed the expectations that were given at the time of the sale, then it's not going to be closed for long. They're probably going to cancel, and you're not going to continue that relationship. They'll probably lose trust in you. And so I know there's a lot of books out there, materials on closing, and sometimes I think it's maybe can be a misnomer, even though we all know generally the kind of, or the type of transaction that is taking place or what that means.
Yeah. I think I've always, well, I shouldn't say I've always, but it's my belief currently that the difference between closing and sales, because you have people all the time who are like, I don't like sales. I don't like salesmen. I can't sell. They have all these beliefs around selling. And I personally draw the line the same exact way I draw the line of manipulation versus persuasion. If you're and maybe, in slight different context, I'll explain that. When you're closing, what's the objective of closing? Like, what's the end result of closing?
Some kind of exchange of value and transaction takes place.
Okay, I would say that's the goal. That's what we hope happens. But whether or not they choose to work with you, in my opinion, closing is what is helping them come to a decision. So if you look at everything you do as purely, hey, I'm just here to help you come to a decision. It's my job to make sure that I don't leave your house, your porch, your wherever, wondering, maybe I'll do this later. Like, that's the worst position you could put somebody in, especially if they already weren't in Wonderland and then you brought them into Wonderland and you just ditched them out there. That sucks really bad to leave a client there. And salespeople, they do that a lot because they're just like, they're only in it for themselves. So they're like, well, I'm going to try and sell this to you. I'm going to take you out of this comfortable place you're in not knowing. I'm going to take you out in this uncomfortable place. And if you don't want my product, I'm just going to leave you out there. And with no regard for the person, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically, financially, doesn't matter. Like, they're just like, they're just using people to get their end of closing business or getting more income and selling something. And I would just be aware of that as you're going through with, like, in life. Is this person trying to close me on something, or are they trying to sell me something? Are they trying to sell me their idea, or are they trying to help me come to a decision about whether it's good or bad? And they don't have an emotional outcome or investment into whether the answer is yes or no for me. And that's another thing. So how does having that emotional, how do you detach yourself from the emotional response of a yes or no in a sales cycle?
No, I love that question. And I love the concept behind it, because you really have to. I mean, people can sense when you're desperate to get a sale or to help them, to do the business with you. And so, in my opinion, it became easier for me personally to emotionally detach from people's decision when I knew that I was putting enough work in that I would get some sales. I would be able to earn the income that I needed to provide for myself.
So your own personal activity was the solution to removing emotion from an individual transaction.
Yes, and I'm not saying that I'm perfect at it. It always creeps in.
What?
No, not like you, Sam.
Whatever.
No, neither of us are perfect, but no, yeah, but yes, I think that has been the number one thing to give me reassurance. Like to be able to really, authentically say, doesn't matter as much to me if you do this or not. I'm here to help you get to a yes or no. And now when I start my my presentation to people, I'm very upfront about that. Hey, I'm gonna show you what we have. You'll have all the info that you need to be able to make a decision, yes or no. Either way is fine, and that really relieves pressure on them because they know that I'm okay with a no. But then they also know that I have the expectation we're gonna make a decision on this, okay? And if you try and back out and kind of be wishy-washy at the end, then I'm going to remind you, hey, we talked about this before. You can say no. If so, just tell me. But if you're kind of wishy-washy, there must be something that we need to explain better, need to understand better in order for you to have the information necessary to make an informed decision or not.
Absolutely. So I happen to know that you're the oldest in your family out of your siblings, correct?
Yep, that's right.
Okay. So how have you tell us the story of like your childhood or like how you got to this point, because nobody just gets all of this knowledge without learning it from somewhere. So where did you where do you feel like you learned this knowledge or these skills, and how do you see them applying in like a family situation or a relationship situation?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, these skills that we're talking about right now, I wouldn't say I was taught a ton of them in my childhood. I mean, I had a really good childhood, grew up great family, excelled in school and different activities. It wasn't really until, probably the first time that I really started to develop these kinds of skills was when I started mission for my church. And I was talking with people every single day. That was a big challenge for me because I was kind of a shy person. I didn't usually initiate many conversations. And I'm still introverted, where I get my energy by being alone and having my personal quiet time. But I would say that was the first time that I really learned how to talk with people. And I'm glad very glad I served that mission. And then when I was in college, I took a job, my first summer sales job. And that's when I really started to feel like I was learning the skills necessary to not only be successful in that, but to feel confident in whatever I decided to do. I felt like I had the confidence to talk with people, to really learn to be professional, learn to be persuasive, and yeah, those skills have just carried over into other areas of life. I feel like it's going to benefit my future family a lot because one thing that comes to mind is just asking questions rather than bossing kids around. Teaching them by asking, because that's one principle of sales is you don't sell by telling, you sell by asking, and helping people to come to their own conclusions about things. Another thing I think that could be beneficial is, when you talk in sales about closing, you give two options. You give alternate of choice. You say, oh, would you like us to come out this day or tomorrow? Right? Either way, it's a yes, but you're still allowing for choice. And I feel like that's important. I don't have any kids yet. I'm not, don't have a family yet, but I feel like when that time comes, that will be a valuable skill that can carry over into that regard. Hey, would you like to pick up your toys and carry your toy to your room, or do you want to roll it?
Yeah, you're probably going to be a better dad than me. I just spank them. If they don't listen, spank them. I haven't figured out the asking questions. No, it's interesting. You know, I don't know that there's anybody who thinks they're the perfect parent. Please give me a call. I don't know any perfect parents. I sure as heck am not one myself. And it is fascinating. We all have these ideas about the way that we're going to parent. And then it's like what I think it was Mike Tyson. He said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And then there's just not there anymore. I honestly feel that way a lot with kids. And there's better days and worse days, but I don't know what I think back on my childhood, and although I didn't love every aspect of my childhood, what I did ultimately like is I liked having clear guidelines, clear boundaries about what was okay and what wasn't okay. And the more clear the boundaries were, the better it was for me. The less clear, the more ambiguity I didn't like. So for instance, if you say, hey, yeah, you can do this when I'm calm, but when I'm having a bad day, when you're doing the same thing, then I freak out at you, right? I don't like these double standards very much. And with that, sometimes comes how do I say this? Somebody's going to report me. No, I'm just kidding. I need to to actually create stern guidelines. Say, look, no, this is never okay. You can never treat me that way. You can never treat your siblings that way. You can never treat your mom that way. I don't care. And here's the punishment or the discipline for that type of behavior, and be consistent with that discipline. Sometimes it's fine to give your kids latitude as they're growing up and say, hey, how do you want to accomplish this? But just like in any sales cycle, sometimes people are like, well, I don't want to accomplish that. Right? So then what? Then what do you do? How do you make sure they accomplish it? Because here's the funny thing. In sales, most of the time we're negotiating with adults and they're actually responsible for themselves, or we hope they are. With kids, you're responsible for them. You have to take care of them. So I'm just going to tell a funny story that happened the other day. So when I was younger, well, two stories. When I was younger, we had to sew our own clothes, or we got to sew our own stuff. And I didn't know how to use a sewing machine when I was super, super young. And I ended up sticking the sewing machine needle right through my finger because I was pushing the fabric too close. Oh. And it went through my fingernail, through my whole finger. Not a great experience for me. And so then my wife, she got out the sewing machine because she was going to sew a blanket for me for my birthday. And I have two young sons, one's 4 and one's 2. And I was like, well, better teach them young not to stick their finger in the way of the needle. And so I grabbed each of their hands, I put the needle up, and I grabbed each of their hands and pricked their finger with the needle so that they knew that it hurt, to keep their fingers away from there. And some would say, oh, that's really bad and wrong. You shouldn't. Why are you causing pain to your child? And it's like, I'm causing pain to my child, a little bit of pain that's controlled, almost like a vaccination, right? A little bit of controlled pain to ensure that they understand that that's painful, and so then they stay away from it. I only had to do it. I tried to do it to my second son, my older one, but I did it to my first son. He saw Declan, he saw Quincy freaking out. So when I tried to grab Declan, he was fighting me pretty hard. So I never accomplished it. But anyways, it's those things those are not just life applicable lessons, but they're leadership lessons. When you're leading a team, how do you set clear boundaries for your team and say, look, this is what's acceptable, this is what's not acceptable, and here's the disciplinary rules, here's the consequences of these actions. How do you set that up from a team perspective? You've been in summer sales for how long now? 5 years?
Yeah, about 5 years.
So you've done it there. You're also building a team in another industry. How do you set up those clear expectations and guidelines in a team structure?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if I've had as much experience with that, and I'd love to get your feedback. But I think obviously leading by example is very important. But it's one thing that I've learned is it's not what you say, it's what you enforce. It's that really speaks to people, because you can have expectations. You can say, hey, if you do this, this will happen, and if it doesn't, then no one's going to trust you anymore. So I think it takes a high level of personal integrity to be true enough to the standard and the rules, not only yourself but also letting people know that, hey, if this is, we're serious about that, and demonstrating that by your actions. And then I think just a constant reminder as well. Repetition is, the mother of learning. So being consistently talking about guidelines, boundaries, and what is okay and what's not. I think those are key.
Love it. So what are you doing now? I know you have one more year of sales, but summer sales. But what are you doing? Like, what other businesses are you a part of now?
Yeah. So it's actually. So I mean, I went to school. I graduated from college in the business school, and I studied accounting. And I thought, oh, I'm going to be a CPA, I'm going to be a tax accountant. Well, after doing an internship in that for a summer, I realized that that wasn't the path that I wanted to pursue. I loved sales too much. I loved the one-on-one interaction too much, and so I wanted to do something still kind of in the financial industry. And so now I've actually started working with the company. Our goal is to teach people about the fundamentals of money and really how money works. Like a lot of these things that were not and are not taught in the school system about, how to prepare for the future, how to build a stable financial foundation for your life so that you can have confidence that your income, your lifestyle will be preserved no matter what happens. And so it's an industry that I feel like is very needed in the world today. I've seen it as I've been out doing summer sales. I've seen people who outwardly look like they're financially off, like they're financially good, and you go in their home, you're engaging in a financial transaction with them, and you learn that they're really struggling, and a lot of people just aren't saving for the future, or don't know how, or don't know the risk that they're at with what they're currently doing, and they don't manage or know how to manage those risks. So that's what I'm doing now, and that's kind of our long-term goal with me and my team is to develop that industry. Summer sales is awesome, and I've loved the leadership skills and the transformation that it has made. It's kind of a springboard into this new area of my life.
That's cool. So if somebody were to work with you, like what does that process look like? You sit down, and where does that go from there, and what does that process look like to find out what actually somebody needs?
Yeah, well, I mean, first it just takes people being open, getting educated. We have a book a very short book that people read, and they can learn about really how money works and these things that they never learned. And then once they kind of have the lingo and they understand these basic concepts, then we take a look, sit down with them, take a look at where they're at financially, what are their goals, and usually people's goals are way over here, and what they're doing is not on the right trajectory. That's the biggest thing that I find, and a lot of people just have unrealistic expectations of, if I'm doing this, I'm doing enough, and sometimes it's a hard conversation to have with people. Like bringing that clarity and just kind of opening the curtains and saying, okay, well, have you considered this, or this? And like, oh no, I never really thought about that. Okay, well, if you stay on the same path, this is where you're going to be. This is how far off we are, and then let's come up with a plan to get you on track. And so I love just just that course correction that we can have with people when it comes to helping them financially. I love bringing that clarity because no one's really showed that to them.
Yeah, it's pretty cool just being a truth sharer. I don't know how else to say it, but just somebody who's able to share truth, shed light. And sometimes the light is not well received. Sometimes you shed light and they repulse and they're like, nope, I want to go back into the darkness and pretend that I didn't just see what I just saw. It's like, hey, okay, whatever, whatever works for you, works for you. I say that a lot, right? When I'm helping people change their lives, look, however, if they choose not to change their life, it's not going to make one bit of difference for me and my family's life. Like, I don't need to coach people. I enjoy coaching people. I enjoy doing this podcast. I enjoy doing a lot of things, but like, my life is not going to be significantly worse off if they choose not to do something better for themselves or for their family. Now, for their family's sake, I hope that they make some better choices, right? But if they say no to me, that's fine. Like, I definitely don't want to work with people who don't want to work with me. That's the worst. I think everybody's experienced some sort of experience where they're working with somebody who doesn't want to work with them, and it's just terrible the whole time. So I totally understand that. I love it. If somebody wanted to get in touch with you, contact you, explore how they could reach their goals faster, where's the best place to get a hold of you? Where do you hang out the most?
Yeah. I mean, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram. Marcus Tarr is my name. Instagram, tar.marcus. And that's the best way, just to reach out there, and I can provide some resources and kind of direct you in the right path to know how to get a meeting set up, or send you some videos about what we do.
Sweet. I love it. So here's the legacy on rapid fire. Love this section. Are you ready to go?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So what do you think is holding you back from reaching the next level of your legacy today?
I think the thing that is holding me back is a level of belief, really, in myself and my abilities, and the commitment that it requires to get there.
Okay. What's the hardest thing you've ever done or accomplished?
Probably the hardest thing I've ever done was having to give something up that I loved very much. Before I went to the business world, I was going to major in music, and that was one of my life passion that had kind of defined me up until that point in my life. And I felt that it wasn't going to be my life path anymore, and that's what I had to give up to make way for bigger and better things. But at the time, it was the hardest decision I had to make.
That's crazy. And what's your greatest accomplishment up to this point in your life?
My faith is really important to me. I think that as far as accomplishments go, remaining faithful, active in my church and in my daily practices to stay right spiritually, because I feel like that is the foundation of my belief about myself and my potential, and also the way that I interact and serve others.
That is huge. I love that. And if you had one secret habit, mindset, or behavior that you feel contributes most to your success in life, what would it be?
Yeah, it's a good question. I haven't thought about that before. I would say I am. So it's a strength and a weakness. I'm a very chill person, and so I don't usually allow setbacks to affect me too much. I don't dwell on them maybe as much as other people would. Kind of let it roll off the back and just keep moving forward. It's probably what I would say.
I agree. That is exactly who Marcus is, and it is a blessing. I think it's way more of a blessing than a curse. I have a similar blessing / curse, and the hard part can be that the bad stuff doesn't really get you fired up to go do something better. It's just like, oh, okay, moving on. Next. So you have to manufacture fire. Yeah, manufacture fire a different way. So if there was one or two books you think that the Fuel Your Legacy audience could benefit from, what would they be?
Well, I don't know what's been mentioned already in the past, but if you're looking for a book to be successful in any area of life, Think and Grow Rich, I think is a classic way on mindset. A lot of people shy away from it just because they think it's only talking about getting more money, and they feel like that's not their focus. But it's really training on mindsets, faith, desire that translate to any area of life. So I would say that one. Maybe people that are in sales are listening to this. One of the fundamental books that I refer to a lot is Secrets of Closing the Sale by Zig Ziglar. That is an awesome book that explains a lot of the why, intricacies of that process. And so I'll put that out for all my sales people out there.
Absolutely. Perfect. So here's the final question. You have to pretend that you've died and your children, your great, great, great grandchildren, they're sitting around a table discussing the life, the impact you had, and the legacy you left. What do you hope people are saying about you 6 generations from now?
Yeah, I love this question. And I think I love it because I have ancestors that, my 5th great grandfather that I still remember and look up to, and I have records of who he was. And so I think the number one thing would be that I was faithful in the gospel, in my church, in my faith, and that I prioritized my family life and but also went beyond that and made a huge difference in the lives of other people. As my life develops, I think the way that'll happen will change in various ways. But I think I want people to know that I had a set of beliefs that I stuck to, and I never wavered from.
Awesome. I love it. I think that is, from my years of knowing Marcus, I would say that accurately describes him as of right now. He's very thoughtful, very intentional, and extremely faithful. I believe he is the most, I'm fairly certain I can say this without any trepidation of anybody else that I know, the most intentionally faithful person that I know, and consistently faithful person that I know. And that's a major aspect of their life. There's a lot of people who are faithful, and I'm not saying anything bad about them, but until you know Marcus and know his priorities, you wouldn't know that. But because I do know him, I can say that more so than myself, even, he's extremely committed to his faith, and that drives him. So I'm grateful for you coming on the show, Marcus. Thanks for doing this. More people need to meet you. So hopefully they go contact you on Instagram and Facebook. Find out more about what you're doing.
Yeah, that'd be great. I appreciate you having me on, Sam. You're a great mentor and leader to me. So
no problem. Hey, we'll catch you guys next time on the Fuel Your Legacy show. Send this out, share it with other people so they can become better, more persuasive closers in their life. Talk to you soon. Thanks for joining us. If what you heard today resonates with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me, and if you do give me a shout out, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Thanks to all of those who've left a review. It helps spread the message of what it takes to build a legacy that lasts. And we'll catch you next time on Fuel Your Legacy.